Well, even the best writers need editors. That said, few journalists I know would want the FBI to serve in that role. Now, in this era of highly polarized veins of information, the FBI making it known that they're watching and reading what's being written. Now, according to independent journalist Ken Klippenstein, he heard a knock at his door last week, only to find out it was a special agent from the FBI. Ken wrote on his Substack that there was no subpoena, no search warrant, no prior announcement, no claims of illegal behavior. It had to do with him having published the J.D. Vance dossier, which he obtained from presumably an Iranian hacker, got him briefly for some time suspended as well from Twitter, and a visit from the FBI. Are they delivering a chilling message? We know where you live, we know what you're doing, and we are watching?
Now, Ken says the agent told him he had been the target of a foreign influence operation, as Robby mentioned, and that was with regard to a news article he had written, which is indeed thought to be a reference to the publication of the Trump campaign's opposition dossier on J.D. Vance. Here to tell Rising more about what happened to him is Ken Klippenstein himself. Hey, Ken.
Hey, guys. Good to be with you.
Thanks for joining us. So, I mean, we've laid out, I think, pretty fairly what happened there. Now, people can get into the debate about where this document originated from, how there can be different security considerations perhaps around that. But the thing that struck me reading your account of this was obviously the FBI literally calling at your door to your house. It does seem that this could literally have been an email if the real purpose was just to say, we think you've been the target of a foreign influence operation. So what was your reaction? What did you make of it? And did the FBI agent explain anything that would answer that question I just raised?
So when they visited, I asked them, I kind of joked, I was like, well, what took you guys so long? Because I knew that the FBI would be watching this. I mentioned prominently in the story that this is very likely of Iranian origin, that they have an interest in former President Trump losing, since he has a harder line set of policies on Iran. And so the special agent replied, well, when did you write the story? I said 2 weeks ago. And he says, well, that's pretty fast for the federal government. And so there was a kind of comic aspect at the same time that there was a concerning one about the role of the federal government and why they didn't just send an email, like you said, which I think would be the easiest way to have handled this. But then I asked him also, I said, he had a prepared statement. It was about a paragraph long, maybe 4 sentences or so. And the whole thing was very stilted and weird. He had it on a clipboard and he says, okay, I'm supposed to read you the statement. So he reads me the statement telling me basically what you just said, that I've been the target of a foreign influence operation. And then I replied to him, I said, yes, I know. I said that in my article. I said that this is very likely of Iranian origin. And then I said, so that being the case, what was the point of this? And he was stumped. He just was like, look, man, I got sent out here to read this. I don't really know. And then he said, I haven't read the article. And so, so it was both Kafkaesque, but also this kind of absurdist quality to all of it. Because I was like, what, you didn't read the article, but they sent you out here? He said, I'm just supposed to read this. And so he was sort of puzzled by the whole thing too. Didn't have an answer to what the point of telling me something I already knew was. And, you know, it was a short meeting. He said he had other things to do. And so after that, he left. And that was that. You know, I think of this from the perspective of many other reporters who maybe aren't national security reporters. It didn't have a chilling effect on me. I'm happy to continue publishing other things should I get them. But I have to imagine that most people get a visit like this and have a certain response. And I wonder if that's why the media in total uniformity has declined to run these things, without exception. Every other outlet would not run either the Vance dossier or the other hacked materials that the Iranians are shopping around.
Yeah, you and I had a longer conversation about this the other day for the publication, the show Unheard, and you pointed out, and I absolutely agree with you, that it is so strange that numerous mainstream journalistic outlets was given this same information and said, you know what, there's nothing really to see here, we're not going to publish it. Or that's the excuse they gave. Now, it could be, right. I suspect it is, and I think you suspect it is, that in this era of heightened panic, or we would maybe argue moral panic about the level of foreign influence and how damaging that has been to democracy, there is greater reticence than there would have been before to publish this kind of thing if it was obtained illicitly. In the past, journalistic mainstream outlets have not shied from publishing if they think there's reason to do it. Now, you can't, steal the documents yourself and then publish them, because the stealing is a crime, but this fell into their hands, fell into your hands, and all of them made the same decision except for you.
Exactly. And I think that's exactly right. These media organizations, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico, they're not going to come out and say, oh, we're afraid of the federal government, or, oh, we feel ourselves deputized into the role of carrying out the federal government's war on foreign malign influence, as they call it. They're not going to admit that. They're going to have to say something else, which is, I think, what they've said. Oh, there was nothing newsworthy in it. Nothing newsworthy about about the vice presidential nominee and the 171-page long list of his policies and what the campaign considered noteworthy about them. I find that very hard. I mean, it just doesn't pass the smell test. And so if it's not that, then what is it? And I have to imagine it's either fear, perhaps at them having gotten visits from the Bureau as well, which is something that has not happened in the past. I couldn't find any examples of the Justice Department does have a notification process for things like social media companies and tech companies, other firms, but I've not seen this happen with news media before. So I think this is a new program. And perhaps they received a similar visit and they came to a different conclusion, which was, oh gosh, maybe we shouldn't run this. Or I think there's a very unhealthy development in the kind of political culture, which is that everyone feels themselves deputized into the role of, fighting the federal government's wars on whether it's disinformation, foreign disinformation, and you see it in the discourse. Instead of just describing things as false or incorrect, or my favorite, everything is disinformation now, which implies that there's some kind of shadowy actor propagating this stuff on purpose, instead of just your uncle sharing some weird meme that maybe he fell for and didn't really think very hard about. So I think there's just been a huge shift culturally in people feeling kind of like the Department of Homeland Security says, see something, say something, where people feel like, oh, now I have to be a part of this war. And I think it's very unhealthy, especially when it affects the news media, which is supposed to be independent of the federal government.
I'm curious, Ken, just in terms of your decision to publish the dossier in the first place. You pointed out in your first remarks there that you rightly were pretty forthright about the fact that you did think it probably came from some manner of Iranian source. And obviously any journalist, independent or otherwise, is balancing different imperatives about the newsworthiness. Is there private information? Is there information that would place people in danger? All of that. Did your recognition of the fact that it probably came from an Iranian source change the calculus for you in any way? Like, do you think there are genuine concerns there, even if you thought they were outweighed in this case by the public imperative to see the document?
Anytime something comes from a foreign adversary, it raises the bar a little bit, and you have to think about, okay, what is the public interest? What is this adversary interest? But again, going back to what I said before, I really try to avoid seeing myself as some kind of James Jesus Angleton of the of the media that's supposed to worry about what. I mean, that's the federal government's responsibility to fight those things. I do not think that that's the media's responsibility. If I answer you candidly, yes, I can't avoid thinking about those things. I'm an American. I care about the country. I don't want it to be hurt. But I think that the focus of the news media has to be in its role in informing people about stuff that's important, not in being seconded into some kind of war on foreign adversaries.
And you think the mainstream media is too prone to being seconded in that fashion by implication, right?
I think not just the news media. I should be clear about this. The general public too. After 2016, I think that there's been something of a hysteria, which is not to say that foreign malign influence campaigns don't exist. They clearly do. There's an abundance of evidence for it. But what is not discussed is how effective are they, and what is a proportional amount of concern to be afforded to them, which I don't think is stopping publishing things. I think that the response to it has been wildly out of proportion to the threat, because there is no evidence that foreign malign influence campaigns have succeeded at swinging, certainly not a presidential election, much less other prominent elections. And so I just wish that there was some amount of rationality that looked at, okay, what are the stakes here? What are the potential consequences? And I think if people did look at that, and there's good scholarship on this, Rand Corporation did a great study on Russian foreign malign influence campaigns, which, by the way, are described by the intelligence community as being much more dangerous to the U.S. than Iranian influence operations. The Rand Corporation concluded that they're poorly executed, poorly organized, and generally incompetent. And I think that's basically what the facts show. But there's never any discussion of that for a number of reasons. One being that the media has a lot of incentive to sensationalize and to make things sound more ominous than perhaps they are, you look at a case like the Iranians, they do not have the experience and the practice that the Russians have of 50 years of the Cold War to know how to construct propaganda that is persuasive to the American people. And I think that's what you see with these particular hacks. I mean, I don't think it made J.D. Vance look bad. I didn't think it made Trump look bad any worse than what people already think about them. So I think that I just think that people are responding sort of hysterically to this whole thing.
Ken Klippenstein, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Coming up next, we have some breaking news. Israel is investigating the possibility that they might have killed the head of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar. Stay tuned.